So let's dig into inserting our source now. So you can insert an image, a logo, or a video. Now video isn't technically supported for a frame-by-frame effect, but you can do a freeze frame, which we're going to show you how to do right now. So I'm going to go in and hit Command-I, and that'll allow us to import. And then I have a tutorial assets folder. So we have a logo, we have an image, and we have a video clip. I'm going to import all three of them. And then I'm just going to, they're highlighted, I'm just going to click and drag them into our images folder. Now it's going to have two of these same images because I already have this one inserted. But let's go into the logo. Now what you can do is just click, drag, and drop it in there. And then I'm going to delete the image that I have set up and then click it and hit S. And we can scale it up or down. If your logo is vector, then you can enable this box that would be right there, and that'll continuously rasterize your logo. And that's how you'd insert your logo. Let's do it for an image. You would just take, click, drag, drop, scale, hit S, scale it down. Maybe if you want to position it a different way, whatever you like to do for there. And then finally, we have a video clip. So sketch clip is my example. Now, when you insert a video, all you have to do is just find the spot where you want to freeze frame. So maybe it's like right there, for example. And then I'm going to click on the video, right click, go to time, freeze frame, and that'll freeze frame that particular frame. Now we're just going to drag it over, and then that is how you create a freeze frame. So we have our source inserted now. For the rest of the demo, I'm just going to keep using the barn example because that comes standard when you open up the project file. So I'm just going to keep working with that. We should be good to go now for inserting our source. So let's dig into isolating the results. So let's begin by first going to step 2, isolate. And if you're not seeing that composition by default, and you should be, but just in case you're not, go back to sketch and then edit and then step 2, isolate. Now within here, select the layer and hit UU. And you can see that there's a mask applied to this with the feathering set to 200 pixels. The transform, don't worry about that. That's not important. And as a side note, I do have shy layers enabled just for advanced users so that you know, in a lot of this setup, there are shy layers enabled if you're trying to find something within here. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this. And there's two ways you can basically isolate it using this method. You can use the actual pen tool, or you can use the ellipse tool, and that creates a mask on the layer that you're working with. And we'll go through both of those right now. So let's say that we want to isolate the barn. So we can manually go to the pen tool, and we can hit the hotkey of G if you'd like, but I'm going to try and stay away from hotkeys in this as much as possible. So we're going to go to the pen tool, and then with that selected, we're just going to click around our barn, make points around there, and then go back to the beginning. Make sure that when you're looking at the pen tool, there's that little circle icon, so that closes the ellipse or the pen shape that you're working with. And then we can see that there's a gray area on the outside, and that is what is not selected. So whatever is within that area that you use the pen tool, that's going to be what is isolated. You can see that on this layer that it created a new mask. So we're going to twirl that down right there, and we're going to go to mask feather, and we're going to turn that up to 200. Now, it's really important in this that you use the feathering, because if you don't, you're going to get jagged edges. And whenever we're working with sketches, it's typically not desirable to have hard edges. Okay, so we have that first method. I'm going to delete that. Let's just do it one more time in case you wanted like 2 areas, which you can definitely do with this. So I'm going to delete it. Let's say we want the barn and this fence area. So I'm going to quickly use the pen tool around there. So that's our first shape. And now I'm going to making sure that I select the layer again. I'm going to go around and I'm going to create a new mask around there. I'm going to hit select the layer and quickly, and that's going to drop down the mask options, turn the feathering up to 200 on both of these, and we'd be good to go. Now, before I move on to the next tool, I just want to mention that if you click and hold on the pen tool, you can add vertex points, delete them, convert them. For our sake right now, let's just stick with adding and deleting. So I'm going to select here, and then I have the regular pen tool selected. So I'm just going to go around the barn one more time really quick. Now let's say I wanted to move one of these points. If we have the pen tool selected, this regular pen tool, then we can go over to a point and we can click and drag and move them around. Let's say that we want to delete one. You can either do it one of 2 ways. You can either select the point and hit delete, or you can click, hold, and go to delete vertex tool and select them. Let's say you want to add, we would just go to the add vertex tool, add it in there. Now, if you wanted to move these now, you would have to go back to the pen tool. And now we can click and drag those points. So the other way of doing it is by using the shape tool. So we're going to click and hold, and you can see that we have a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star. I find that the ellipse tool is the one I use the most, using it for this isolation method. So we're going to click the ellipse tool, and then we're going to go back to the timeline, select the layer that we want to isolate, and then double click on the ellipse tool. And that'll create an ellipse based on the dimensions of the composition that you're working with. So you can see that a mask was created. So we're going to twirl that down. Now you could also adjust this before we add the feathering. So if you go to a point and you double click and you hold on a Mac command or on a PC control, you can scale it down from the center and get maybe the results you want. So maybe we want the barn. So we'll click there and I'll let it go. And then I'm going to drag anywhere in the middle now that this box is around the mask tool. And if you're not seeing the box, you might have the controls disabled. So hit Command-Shift-H on a Mac or Control-Shift-H, and that will allow you to see the mask box that I'm working with. Okay, so I'm just going to, with the box selected, move that over to the barn. Now we're going to go to the mask feather and turn that up to 200, and that's it. All right, so now we know the two ways to isolate. We can use the pen tool or the shape tool. So let's dig in to the focal areas. Within step 3, focal area, we're going to see that it's almost the exact same setup as step 2. So what we're going to be doing in step 3 is we're going to be selecting an area within our source that we really want the viewer's eye to go to right away. So areas that are isolated in step 3 have less scribble, have more contrast, and more of the original visible so that the viewer can clearly see that area. So I'm going to go into step 4 really quick and peek at the results. So this is what we're getting so far, and I think it's looking really cool, but I want to turn this layer off using the eye icon and go back to step 4 now. It's going to update. So you can see that we lost all that detail within the focal area. Now if I go back and re-enable that, you can see that now we can clearly see the barn door and the window in there and some of the lumber that's being used. And this is really useful for, say, for example, faces. You want to make sure you add a focal area to the eyes, and you can use your judgment on what you want. And the cool thing about how this project is set up is you can really quickly adjust something, move it around, and then go back and look at the results and see oh, okay, I kind of like that one scribble that was created in this area, or let's see what happens if I do it over here versus over there. So that's everything for the focal area. It's just playing around with where we want the viewer's eye to go to first. All right, let's dig into step 4, edit. So within this composition, we have 3 layers set up: sketch controller, scene controller, and extras. Now within each one, within the effect controls panel, it has a few different effects set up for you, and some more than others, especially the extras feature in this particular product. Within Sketch Controller, we have, this is the kind of main features I want you to focus on. So think of these as as far as the sketch results go, these ones are really important. The Scene Controller, these affect everything from the background to the colors. And then the extras are just that. They're the extra features if you really want to fine tune the results that you're getting. You'll notice also that I have shy layers enabled. So if we disable shy layers, you can see that we have filters and CC. So if you're going to want some custom color correction, this is where I'd recommend doing it. And then below that, we have the effects. And this is the main building block of the sketch result that you're seeing. There's a bunch of different blend modes involved and textures and scribbles. So I'm going to enable shy layers again. And let's just focus on Sketch Controller for right now. So this is probably the main one you're going to be working with, this simple realism amount. And it's on a slider. I would recommend using parameters from 50 to 90 on here. So if we turn this down, the simple realism amount, it will become more organic and more abstract. Now you're still seeing quite a bit of the barn showing through in here, but that's because of the focal area. So if you're looking for a really abstract looking sketch, what you can do is disable the focal area. And now it's kind of even indistinguishable at this point, unless you're kind of squinting your eye. And that might be the look you're going for. I'm going to re-enable that. And the opposite is true too. If we go, it was on 80, so if we go to 90, now we're clearly seeing a barn. And you can kind of run into a territory where you're getting too photorealistic, and then that doesn't look good either, but it all depends on the look you're going for. So just know that you can play around with this setting. I have it defaulted to 80. I went back and forth on 70 and 80 depending on the image or source that I'm working with. Next, we have the outline opacity, and this is more so related to the optional elements. So I'm going to skip over this right now. Scribble opacity, if we turn this down, a lot of the effect of Sketch is made from scribbles and organic, unique scribbles on every single one. But you can lower that effect if you don't quite like it. Personally, I like the scribble effect, but you can customize this however you like. Next, we have the scribble opacity on focal area. So you can see right here that there aren't many scribbles over the area that we chose in step 3. I have it so that they're kind of visible, but if you'd like it to be way more visible, that the scribbles go over that area, you can turn up that value. I have a random seed set up so that all the scribbles and crosshatches will be unique depending on the seed. And then the boost and smooth, that is also for the optional elements later that we're going to go over. You don't have to worry about those too much. Next, we have the scene controller, and within there, we have the background options. So by default, the paper is enabled, but if we disable that and enable .grid, we can see that it kind of looks like one of those .grid sketchbooks that are set up, which I thought was a really kind of cool look for some of these results. Like if it looks like you're maybe trying to sketch out a logo and you're using some different examples or something. And then we also have a gradient option in here as well. And it's a really subtle gradient that's on by default, or disable the background. So I'm going to disable the gradient and enable disable background. And you can see that that checker means that it's transparent. And you can see that by enabling this toggle transparency grid right there. So I'm going to put this back. So these ones you can play around with: contrast, highlight levels, shadow levels, if you want to fine tune the results that you're getting. And remember too, you can always go back to step 1, insert source. And let's say you want to make it brighter. So you could add a curves and increase that, and that will significantly change the results that you're getting as well. So we'll go back into here, scene controller. I have a few different color effects set up for you. Just kind of the main ones you see. I'll just do a couple as an example, like kind of a antique look and a little bit more subtle. Color 4. It's kind of like that Da Vinci style look. And then these bottom ones are if you like it, but you maybe think it's a little bit too strong. So you can go into color 4 opacity and then lower that to like 50. And that'll be that color effect at 50% opacity. And then we'll go to extras. And I'm not going to go into detail because basically what you see is what you get for these different results. As far as like the focal area texture, if you turn it down, it will have less focal texture. And there's quite a few of these to play around with. The ones that are really fun to play around with, I think, are the scribble, the amount, the curviness. The base texture changes the results quite a bit. And it really depends on the amount of shadows and highlights that your source image or whatever is working with. But I did a lot of different examples with this, and the default that I have should work pretty well for out-of-the-box results. And let's say that you don't want a video, you just want a still frame of this. You can go to File, Export, and then Add to Render Queue. And then within there, on the output module, change this to JPEG single frame or PNG single frame, and then hit render and you'll have your one frame. All right, so that's everything for edit. Let's dig into animate. So let's go from step 4 to step 5, animate. And I'm gonna bring the current time indicator to frame 0. And I put a lot of thought into this step, and I want to make sure it's really user-friendly and easy to work with. So I'm just going to walk you through how I would do one pass on here. And then at the end of this section, I'm going to kind of go over more advanced features, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So no, it's just as easy as these few steps I'm going to explain. But first, I want to explain what you're seeing. So you're seeing 5 separate passes, and that's kind of like the main sections that we can choose where we want to have sketched on. I have 5. I only have 4 that I'm actually using in the demo, but 5 just in case you wanted to have an extra one. I wanted to have that in there for you. So what the workflow is going to be is you're going to take the current time indicator and holding shift, bring it to where that marker says end, except for one frame before. And we can see that part of our sketch is being revealed, and that's exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is select an area where we want it to animate on first, probably a smaller area because it starts out small and then it gets larger and larger. How you're going to do that is you're going to grab the animator and then you're going to click and drag this over to where you want. Maybe it's an eye. That's a good place to start for a face. In this example, I'm going to choose the barn door. Now, maybe you don't know where the barn door exactly is and you are having a hard time kind of finding it. I added this reference layer in here that you can enable with the eye icon right there. And now we can see a very faint version of our source. So go back to the animator and just drag that on top of the door just like that. If you want more of the barn door visible from that first sketch, you can increase the radius. Go to Pass 1 Animator and then increase the radius from 200 to 300. And that will reveal more of that area. I'm going to disable the reference. So now we can see that that's what that would be sketching on from frame 0 to frame 89. So next, we're going to reveal more of the barn in our sketch. So I'm going to grab the current time indicator, holding Shift. I'm going to go to the end of Pass 2. After Effects is going to do its thing. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to grab the Pass 2 animator, and I'm going to drag this maybe over here. So it kind of looks like the area that's being sketched on is a little bit bigger, but still connected to that first part. Now, I'm not saying this is how you have to do it. It's just some recommendations. So the radius is a little bit larger on Pass 2. Maybe I'll have it 700, so it's quite a bit larger. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to go to Pass 3. So we're going to hold Shift, bring the current time indicator over to one frame before the end marker on Pass 3. So we're going to grab the animator. I'm going to click and drag and bring that over closer to the barn. Let it render for a second. And then I'm going to go to the radius and bring that to something higher, like maybe 900. Okay, that's looking good. Maybe even larger. Let's go 1100. Okay, that's good. So then finally, we're going to go to the last pass and bring this over, holding Shift to Pass 4. And this is going to be one of the last reveals. So we want most of our sketch to be revealed within this. So I'm going to bring this over, and then I'm going to increase the radius even larger. So we get a little bit more of this area over here and over here. Okay, so we're not seeing everything that's in step 4, right? Like we have a little bit more that's being revealed. And if you want more of the area to be revealed, you can play around with the radius on this to make it a little bit more customized. And then what happens is on Pass 4, if I hit U, you can see that there is an opacity that happens from 100 over to 0. And that is going to reveal the reveal comp that I have set up for you. So we're going to double click into there. And I have a couple different reveals. And all you have to do for this is just change it from like reveal 1 to reveal 2. And this has a couple different angles, like low camera angles over your results that you can see. And I have the demo here. So at the end, what you're seeing for the reveal portion of it is right here, that kind of angled look for it. So it is as simple as that. If you want it exactly like in the demo, that's exactly how I did it. I just went with 4 passes for each one, and then I had it fade into a reveal. And if that's all you want for your reveal, perfect. You are done. You can go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue, select your render settings. I'm going to go over that in the very last tutorial, just recommended render settings, but that's all you'd have to do. So now that you know the basic workflow, let me go over a couple more advanced things that I want you to know about. Within each one of these passes, the animator actually has 2 separate options for how it's being revealed. It's either randomly going to different points within that radius, or it's a direction that's set up where you can have it maybe start from up here and then it will kind of zigzag to the bottom. So we would just disable that, enable that, and then go to direction angle and choose the angle where we would want that to go to. It's pretty much that simple. I chose to use random for the first 2, and then direction is on the 3rd one, and then direction is also on the 4th one. So you can modify that however you want. That's just how I found that I liked it the best, where it was kind of more random in smaller areas, like 2 eyeballs, and then the face, it was a direction from top to bottom, and then another top to bottom or bottom to top of the direction of sketching the final kind of details of it. On the very top layer, I have this Sketch Master Animator, and this has properties that affect all of the different passes, not just the individual pass. So something like enable guide, which I don't really think you probably want this disabled, but just in case, disable hand in case you don't want the hand in the results. And this can be useful not only for if you don't want the hand in the final results, but maybe you just want to see more of the area, because sometimes that hand of mine gets in the way when you're trying to see like what has been sketched on. So just disabling that's kind of useful, and then enabling it before you render. So the hand size is automatically set based on the dimensions that you have for your sketch. So the larger your dimensions, the larger the hand is going to be to make sure it fills out that whole area. If you wanted to manually increase or decrease the hand size, you can do that right here. And on the pass animators, I'm going to twirl all these up. The direction angle, we went over that. The direction swing, that's how much it's going to go back and forth. If you wanted to go just a little bit in there, you can do that. That's where the swing would be. And the direction passes is how many zigzags it does within the time that you have it set for. Randomness auto, start and end. If you wanted to randomly like be in a small area and then randomly go out more, branch out more, you can customize that with a random start and end. I wouldn't worry about it. I added it because I could see people wanting it. And that's how I always try to make these products. What could I see somebody being like, man, it'd be really cool if you had this feature. Well, I tried to set it in here just in case, because I could see situations where people would really want a lot of control. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about it. Reveal size, this is one you might want to pay attention to though. So the reveal size is how much of the area is being revealed within here. If you're kind of not getting the results you want, if it's not revealing enough, like maybe for example in here, if you'd like a little bit more to be revealed, we're going to select that animator and then go to reveal size and then change this. And for each little random pass that happens, it's going to reveal more of that result. Same with randomness per second. Maybe we want it to more randomly go to different areas. We can increase that from like 10 to 20. All right, so then the last thing within here is that each one of these different passes, if you really wanted to customize it, you can see that like we have these checkboxes enabled and disabled. So that's what different building blocks, remember how we said in step 4 edit, that's what's going to be revealed in those sections. So maybe you don't want the scribble to be on until the very end, or maybe you want it to just be the base shading for the first pass. You can enable and disable checkboxes to customize that. Again, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. By default, the settings I have are pretty cool. All right, and then the very last thing I wanted to mention quick is that these markers are set up on expressions so that the duration is affected by the marker position. So if you wanted to extend or reduce that time for that layer, you can drag that over and then adjust like the layers within there, and they'll respect that marker. And that's how you animate the results. So let's dig into the optional elements now. Let's go to Sketch, Edit, Optional, and within here we have 3 different options: boost, direction, and outline. The first is boost. So let's double click into there, and I tried to kind of put directions when I could for you. So it says highlight, boost, and then enable plus pen tool. And it's really useful for areas that you just want to give a little boost to. You think it could just use a little bit more contrast. So what we're going to do is select this layer, enable it, clicking the eye icon, and then we're going to isolate an area. So I'm just going to do, for example, the barn door. And again, select the layer, hit MM so we can adjust the mask feather, something like 150, maybe a little bit less because it's a smaller area. And now if we go back to the results, I'm going to zoom in, let it render. It's really subtle. And the thing is, I actually already have a boost set up on the focal area that you've selected. So maybe let's bring it over to here and see the boosted area right there. So there's a little bit more detail. I find it the most useful for eyes, that once you have the eyes to really make them pop in the example. Next is direction. By default, there's one main direction that's happening in the sketch. So if we go back to edit, we can see that there's kind of a direction that's happening in here, kind of a diagonal look. And as I started working with the project more and doing more examples, I started realizing it'd be really cool to modify. Like let's say that for this barn, I wanted the sketch to happen horizontally here and then vertically there, and then maybe horizontally over here. With this setup, you can do that. So how you do that is click on direction, and we have 3 different direction A, B, C layers. So it says in here the directions: pen tool plus direction control. So let's say that you wanted to edit the direction and maybe you wanted it to be horizontal. So we'll bring that to 90 degrees and then go back to step 4 and let that render for a second. And you can see that then everything is going to have the scribbles going sideways, which is kind of cool, and it depends on the look you're going for if you want it to be kind of a uniform direction that they're all going. Remember, you can always go back to extras and then go down to scribble angle variance. This is set to 15. If you set this to like 30, for example, they start to more randomly go in different directions. And I tend to find that it looks kind of cool too, but I really like the control that this offers you. So you can go into the direction and you can isolate this just like you isolated in step 2 and 3. You can isolate areas within here using the pen tool. So we can say that that area, maybe we want to have it go up like that. And then maybe for the next direction, we're going to enable this layer, and then we're going to isolate it like this. And maybe we want B to be horizontal, left to right. And then maybe we want C to be, we'll just kind of select the pen tool over this area. Maybe we want this area to be up and down. So we have diagonal, left and right, up and down. We go back to step 4. And I don't think this necessarily looks that good that way, but you get the idea of how you can really fine tune where you have the scribbles and the direction that those scribbles go. So we'll undo that. I'm just going to disable those and hit M and delete that mask. So then that whole area is selected for direction A. And then we're going to go to outline. Now what outline is if you look in the demo, you can notice that like at the beginning, there was some outlines that were created for the different shapes, right? So like right there, there's an outline of that man's face with some lines through it. And I found that initially when I was making this product, I thought that it'd be cool to have it auto-generate. And over time, I realized that just does not look good at all. I mean, you can clearly tell like other sketch products or artistic products when it's computer generated. And this is just one that I really think needs a human touch. And to be honest, the more I started doing these, the more that I liked that organic touch because I could make it how I wanted. Like maybe there's an area that I wanted to have for an outline. Maybe you have custom sketch outlines that you kind of like to do for your drawings. And how you're going to do this is you're going to use the pen tool just like before. So my notes say pen tool plus no fill plus stroke 1 pix. So what that means is you're going to select the pen tool. You're going to select that blue fill text and then hit that none cross out and then stroke, you want it on. So I'm just going to select in there. Somewhere darker, like maybe not black, but somewhere in there, hit OK, and then set the stroke width to 1. In our other examples, we kind of wanted it to make a shape, but right now we don't really want it to make a shape. We just want it to make a line. So how you do that is you can click away from the shape layer. And I like to kind of click in this area and then start a new one. So clicking there, you can click down here again, clicking here, clicking down here again. Another way you could do that is by using the pen tool. Let's say we want an outline here, is you can hit Option Shift A on a Mac, and that will allow you to deselect. And then you can go in and create another line there. And you can just go in and build this kind of organic outline for your sketch. So now we can see that that is faintly showing in there. And I added some effects to make it look more organic. So if I go to step 5, animate, and I bring this to frame 0, we let that render for just a second. We can see that with each line that I added some kind of organic to make it kind of look like you scribbled over it a few times. Okay, so last we have rendering. So let's dig into rendering our results. So we're going to go to step 5, animate. That's the one we want to animate. And just click on any of the layers and then go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. Now you have to decide if you're going to be rendering out uncompressed or compressed. So if you're going to do uncompressed, that's best for when we're going to bring it into like Premiere Pro and compile a bunch of them together and then render out from there. If we're going to be rendering out for your final output like YouTube or wherever, then you might want to render out in a compressed format that's a high quality. So if you're going to do uncompressed, what I'd recommend there is clicking on the output module, selecting QuickTime, and then going to Format Options and choosing, if you have it, Apple ProRes 422. If you don't have it, click on Animation. You're going to get a pretty large file size, but that's just how it works with uncompressed formats. Click OK. And then if you are dealing with the background being disabled, if you have an alpha channel, you want to make sure you have RGB plus alpha. But if not, just don't worry about that and click on there. Click OK. Now, if you're going to be rendering out for YouTube or wherever directly from After Effects right now, I would queue it in Adobe Media Encoder. So click on that button, and then that'll bring up Step 5 Animate. So click on there, go to H.264, and then match source high bitrate's fine. Maybe if you're using YouTube, you can go down to the YouTube setting, but typically match source high bitrate is exactly what you're looking for. And then just hit the play button.